My son invited me to dinner after 3 years of silence. As I approached his house, the housekeeper stopped me and whispered, "Do not go in there. Run." I believed her, and 9 minutes later, I began watching from a distance. Before we open that door and find out what lies beneath the facade of a perfect family, I have a small request. If you love stories that you just cannot put down, please show your support. It is the best reward for a storyteller. And let me know in the comments which city you are listening from. I am always curious about the geography of our audience. Now settle in and enjoy the story. The Burmese ruby does not tolerate haste. It demands respect, a steady hand, and a light that does not lie. I was sitting at my workbench in my apartment in Upper Manhattan. Outside, a late February wind was throwing sleet against the windows. But here, within the circle of light from my lamp, everything was in perfect order. Before me lay a 10th century necklace, part of a private heritage collection left to me by my late husband. The stones were dark, almost black, but the moment a beam of light touched them at the right angle, a fire the color of pigeon blood ignited inside. I picked up my tweezers. My hands did not shake. At 64 years old, my fingers were just as precise as they were at 20, back when I first started sweeping the floors in the workshop of old Silas Montgomery. The silence in the apartment was thick, almost tangible. I had lived in this silence for the last 3 years. Many would have called it loneliness and pitied a poor mother abandoned by her son. But I did not need pity. To me, that silence was a blessing. It meant the absence of lies. 3 years ago, Marcus stopped speaking to me. The reason was simple and vulgar. I refused to sell my husband's collection to cover the debts of his luxury car dealership, a dealership he opened with my money, furnished with my money, and which he methodically sank with his own vanity. I remember that last conversation. Marcus was shouting that the stones were just dead capital, that I was sitting on a chest of gold like a dog in a manger while his empire was crumbling. I calmly told him that an empire built on someone else's money was going to crumble anyway. He slammed the door so hard, the crystal rattled in the cabinet. Since then, not a call, not a postcard. And you know what? I breathed a sigh of relief. I stopped jumping every time the phone rang, expecting another request for a wire transfer. I stopped looking into his shifting eyes, trying to figure out where the truth ended and the fiction began. I just worked. I knew the value of labor. I breathed the dust of grinding wheels for 40 years so that Marcus could have the best tutors, a prestigious university, and a start in life without debt. But the more I gave, the wider the abyss of his appetite grew. The doorbell cut through the silence like a scalpel. A delivery man stood on the porch, soaked and grumpy, holding a massive bouquet of white lilies. Lilies, the flowers of funerals or guilty husbands. I signed the receipt, closed the door, and set the bouquet on the table next to the rubies. The scent was suffocatingly sweet. There was an envelope in the bouquet. Expensive, heavy paper with embossing, a business card of Marcus's new life. But when I opened it, my professional eye immediately caught a detail anyone else would have missed. The invitation was written with a cheap ballpoint pen that smeared and left ink blots. "Mom, let's forget the past. I was wrong. Come over for dinner tonight. I want to show you the house and make peace. Brianna is making duck. We will be waiting at 7. I ran my finger over the letters. The pressure was heavy and nervous. The paper cost a fortune, but they had written on it with the first thing they could grab: dissonance, a mismatch. In the jewelry business, if the setting is platinum but the stone is mounted sloppily, it is a fake. Life is the same way. He did not just want to make peace. He needed something, and he needed it fast. I looked at the clock. It was 5 in the evening. I had 2 hours. I did not rush around looking for an outfit. I chose a sharp charcoal pantsuit, elegant but practical. I was not dressing for a celebration. I was dressing for a negotiation. I went to the safe and took out a small velvet box. Inside was my primary defense, a jeweler's loupe with 10-fold magnification. I never left home without it if I expected to meet with stones, or with people who like to throw dust in your eyes. Thinking for a second, I returned to the safe. My intuition, sharpened by decades of risk assessment, spoke up softly but insistently. Marcus was inviting me after 3 years of silence right now, while the real estate market was shaky and his dealership was rumored to be in debt again. I pulled a heavy velvet pouch from the back of the safe. It contained a replica of one of the large emeralds from the collection. A lab-grown stone I had made years ago for a museum exhibit as a double. It was magnificent, but to an expert, it was worthless. I weighed the pouch in my hand. If they were expecting me to show up with a dowry, I should not disappoint them. Let them think I was ready to pay for their love. I put the pouch in my purse next to the loop. The click of the clasp sounded like the cocking of a pistol. The drive to the elite suburb in Greenwich, where Marcus had bought a house, undoubtedly with a mortgage he planned to pay off with my money, took an hour. Outside the window, the gray landscapes of the outskirts of New York flashed by. High fences, security cameras, the cold glint of glass and metal. There was no coziness here. It smelled like money that had not yet been scrubbed clean. I pulled up to the security gate. The guard, checking the list, lazily waved me through. I drove slowly down the perfectly cleared road. Marcus's house was at the very end of the street, a pompous cube of concrete and floor-to-ceiling windows. Lights were on in every room, creating an illusion of warmth and celebration. But that was not what caught my attention. 2 houses down from my son's mansion, a black sedan was parked in the shadow of some tall pines. The car was spotless despite the slush on the roads, and the windows were tinted pitch black. No license plates, no identifying marks. I knew that car. Or rather, I knew that type of car. In the New York jewelry world, there is a white side, boutiques, exhibitions, auctions, and then there is the gray side. Pawn shops on the outskirts, fences for stolen goods, and private meetings in the back rooms of restaurants. I had seen that very car 6 months ago outside the office of a notorious middleman we called the Vulture. He specialized in buying jewelry from people in trouble for a quarter of the price. My heart did not skip a beat. Instead, it slowed its rhythm, moving into a state of cold concentration. The Vulture does not show up for family dinners. The Vulture flies to where things are dying. I killed the engine, but did not rush to get out. I sat in the dark cabin, gripping the steering wheel with my leather gloves, looking at the glowing windows of my son's house. The puzzle was coming together. Cheap pen on expensive paper, a sudden invitation, and a black sedan in the bushes. This was not a reconciliation. It was an ambush. I took a deep breath, adjusted my coat collar, and opened the car door. The air was freezing. I took a step toward the house, knowing that every gesture and every look now had to be measured to the millimeter. I was not going to see my son. I was going to war. I walked up the wide marble steps, feeling the graveyard chill through the soles of my boots. The door swung open before I even reached for the bell. It was Esther standing there. Not Marcus, not Brianna, but Esther, the woman who had worked in my home for 10 years until my son took her away, promising double the salary, which I was certain he had been late on for months. Her face was as pale as a sheet. Her eyes were darting around, and her hands were nervously fidgeting with her apron. "Mrs. Lowry!" she said loudly, way too loudly, reaching out to take my coat. "We are so happy to see you." But as she leaned in to take the cashmere from my shoulders, her fingers gripped my forearm painfully hard. She leaned toward my ear, pretending to adjust my collar, and her whisper hit me like a gunshot. "Do not go in there. There are guests inside you should not see. Run, Mrs. Lowry, for God's sake, leave right now." Something clicked inside me. Not fear, not panic. It was the sound of a bolt sliding into place. I did not flinch. My expression did not change. I only held Esther's gaze for a split second. There was genuine terror in her eyes. She was risking her job, maybe even her safety, to warn me. I gave a short, nearly invisible nod. "Thank you, Esther," I said, my voice loud and steady so it would carry into the hallway. "I think I forgot the gift in the car. I will be right back." I turned on my heels with the same grace I used with clients when a deal did not suit me. Calmly, without haste, I walked down the steps, feeling someone's eyes on my back from the living room window. I did not run. Victims run. I walked to the car with the measured pace of someone who had simply forgotten a box of chocolates. Once behind the wheel, I did not peel away. I started the engine, slowly turned around, and drove 50 yards back behind a thick wall of decorative evergreens that hid me from the house, but left me with a perfect view. I killed the engine and turned off the lights. The car became dark and silent. From the glove compartment, I did not pull out chocolates. I pulled out a powerful pair of marine binoculars I always kept with me. It was an old appraiser's habit. Sometimes you need to see the details of a facade or a seal on a gate without getting out. I put the eyepieces to my eyes and adjusted the focus. The living room windows were right there. The curtains were not drawn. Another sign of their arrogance. They were sure the show was going according to plan. 9 minutes. That is exactly how long I sat in the icy silence, watching the house that was supposed to be my family home, but had become a trap. At the 9th minute, the massive oak door opened. A man stepped out onto the porch. He was in his shirt sleeves despite the frost, greedily puffing on a cigarette. I recognized him instantly. Even without the binoculars, I would have known that slumped silhouette and the way he held his cigarette between his thumb and forefinger like a dart. Victor, the Vulture. Cross. A man through whose hands tons of stolen gold and blood diamonds had passed. If he was here, this was not about a family dinner, it was about a transaction. And the merchandise in that transaction was supposed to be me, or rather, what I possessed. They did not just want to talk, they wanted to corner me, pressure me, maybe even scare me into giving up the codes to the bank vault where the heritage collection was kept. The Vulture does not work on credit. If he was here, he was expecting the goods today. Right now. My breathing remained steady. Anger? No. Anger is a hot emotion. It clouds the eyes. What I felt was absolute cold, like liquid nitrogen. It burns away everything unnecessary, leaving only the essence. At that moment, Marcus stepped onto the porch. My son. The boy I read fairy tales to, the teenager I pulled out of trouble, the man who was now standing next to a criminal and smiling. I adjusted the focus. Marcus was laughing. He was saying something to the Vulture, waving his hands as if boasting about a successful hunt. And then he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a thick yellow envelope. He handed it to the Vulture. The man glanced inside carelessly, smirked, and patted Marcus on the shoulder. It was a friendly, patronizing gesture, the way a master pats an obedient dog. That gesture was the final straw. That envelope contained a down payment, or documents, or worse, my personal data. Marcus had sold me out before I even crossed the threshold. He was already celebrating victory, certain that his aging mother would melt at the sight of some lilies and give up everything just to hear her son call her mom again. They thought I was an old, senile woman whose love was a weakness. They forgot who taught them to tell a diamond from a cubic zirconia. They forgot that I can see through people just as clearly as I see through stones. I lowered the binoculars. The decision was made. There was no more doubt, no more hope for a mistake, no more motherly pity. In that second, Marcus ceased to be my son. He became an opponent, dangerous and unprincipled, but predictable. I pulled out my phone. The screen lit up brightly in the dark. I did not call the police. The police take time. They need reports. No body, no case. I needed to act faster and more precisely. I dialed Leo Thorne's number. Leo was a former high-stakes investigator, now the head of security for an insurance syndicate. He was a man who knew everything about the New York jewelry world that never made it into the papers. We had been friends for 30 years. He was the only one who understood that in our business, trust is worth more than the purest diamond. The phone rang for a long time. 1, 2, 3. Eleanor? His voice was raspy and surprised. What happened? Do you know what time it is? I know, Leo. My voice was calm and businesslike, as if I were discussing the cut of a topaz. I need your help, right now. Write down a license plate. Black sedan, no plates, late model. I rattled off the details. Find the owner and see who in the city is looking for large emeralds, fast. Eleanor, what have you gotten yourself into? Alarm crept into his voice. Not me, Leo. My son. He just signed a contract with the devil and I'm about to cancel it. I hung up. My hand reached for the glove box. I pulled out more than just binoculars. There was a professional digital recorder in there, the size of a flash drive. I turned it on, checked the battery, and dropped it into my jacket pocket. Now I was ready. I shifted into gear. The car moved quietly. I did not drive away. I turned around and headed not for my son's house, but toward the exit of the neighborhood. But not to run. I needed time, and I needed a place from which I could strike the first blow. The game had begun, and I was the one setting the rules now. I drove out of the gates and onto the highway. The city lights flickered in the distance, but I was interested in another place. 2 miles away, there was a 24-hour diner at a gas station. Featureless, sterile, with bright neon lights, the perfect place to become invisible. I took a corner booth with my back to the wall and my face to the entrance. I ordered black tea, no sugar. When the waitress left, I took out my phone and placed it face down on the table. My first move was made. The call to Leo had started a mechanism that could not be stopped, but I needed facts. Guesses are for amateurs. Professionals work with evidence. The phone vibrated after 4 minutes. Leo was fast, as always. Eleanor. His voice no longer sounded sleepy. It was tense. You hit the nail on the head. That black sedan showed up on cameras at a shady pawn shop a week ago. The vulture is in trouble. Serious trouble. He owes some heavy hitters from Chicago. They gave him until the end of the week. And what does he need? I asked, stirring the non-existent sugar with a spoon. Large stones, liquid assets. Emeralds, Eleanor. He is looking for emeralds over 10 carats. Clean, Colombian, or Zambian. Rumor has it he already found a seller who promised him the Solstice Emerald. I froze. The Solstice Emerald. It was not just a name. It was a unique emerald from my husband's collection. 22 carats. Perfect clarity. I had never put it up for sale. I had not even shown it to anyone in the last 5 years. Only a handful of people knew it existed. And Marcus. He sold something he does not have, I said quietly. Looks like it, Leo agreed. Eleanor, if the vulture does not get that stone tonight, he is not going to care who is at fault. He will take what he wants by force. Go home. Lock the doors. I will send some guys over. No, Leo, do not send anyone, not yet. I need to know everything first. I hung up. The picture was getting clear. Marcus did not just want money. He was desperate. He had promised a gangster a stone that was sitting in my safe just to save his own skin. And this dinner was not just a trap. It was his last gamble. But there was still one question. How was he planning to get into the safe? I was the only one with the codes. The biometrics were mine. The keys were always with me. Unless... A chill ran down my spine. I dialed a second number. The security firm that guarded my shop and vault. Dispatch, Miller speaking. How can I help you? A cheerful voice answered. Good evening, Terrence. This is Eleanor Lowry. Oh, hello, Mrs. Lowry. Is something wrong? The alarm is silent. Everything is fine here. I know, Terrence. I am just checking the logs. Tell me, who has entered the shop in the last 3 days, after hours? Let me check the journal. I heard the tapping of keys. Let's see. Nothing yesterday. The day before. Oh, well. It was you, Mrs. Lowry. The world tilted for a second. Me? I asked, struggling to keep my voice from trembling. At what time? 9:40 p.m., with the notary. You called yourself, warned us you were coming to sign some documents regarding the lease. We let you in. You were inside for half an hour. I closed my eyes. 2 days ago at 9:40 p.m., I was at home, watching an old movie and drinking tea. I had not left my apartment. Terrence, my voice turned to ice. Describe what I looked like." "Well, same as usual. In your coat, a hat, dark glasses, you had a scarf wrapped around your face, said you had a toothache and could barely talk. The notary did all the talking for you." Of course, the classic move: a toothache, a scarf up to the nose, dark glasses, and a body double, or just a woman who looked enough like me. And the voice? A voice on the phone can be faked or pieced together from old recordings. Modern technology allows for a lot. It meant they did not just want to steal the stone, they had already stolen my business. They forged my signature, brought in a double, and signed over the property. "Terrence," I said very softly, "who was the notary? There should be a record in the journal." "Yes, of course. Here it is. Julian Vance, license number." "I do not need the number," I interrupted. "Thank you, Terrence. You have been a huge help." I hung up. Julian Vance. I remembered him. A scrawny, perpetually sweating boy who went to school with Marcus. Marcus used to let him copy his math homework, and in return he protected him from bullies. Now little Julian had grown up, become a notary, and was paying back his debts by forging documents and certifying fake deals. The anger was completely gone now. In its place was a crystalline clarity. This was not just betrayal. This was an attempt at annihilation. They planned to take everything from me: my life's work, my real estate, my husband's legacy. And most likely, after this dinner, I was supposed to either disappear or end up in a nursing home with a diagnosis of senile dementia so that no one would believe my claims of theft. I took a sip of my cold tea. It was bitter. They thought I was a helpless old woman. They thought I would not find out until it was too late. They thought they were playing chess with a pigeon, but they were wrong. They had sat down to play with a grandmaster and did not even know the rules. I opened my banking app, checked my accounts. Everything was still there for now, but it was only a matter of time. If the shop was signed over, they would get to the accounts soon. I had to act. Not tomorrow, not in an hour. Now. I stood up, left a $20 bill on the table, and walked out into the freezing night. Marcus was waiting for his mother for dinner. Well, Mom was coming, but she was not bringing forgiveness. She was bringing the reckoning. I got into the car, but before I turned the key, I took that velvet pouch with the fake emerald out of my purse. I looked at it in the light of a street lamp. The glass sparkled beautifully, brightly, deceptively, the perfect bait for greedy rats. I started the engine again. Now my path was not toward my son's house. I had one more stop to make first. The office of Notary Julian Vance was downtown, but I knew where he lived. Marcus had let slip once that Julian had bought a condo in a new complex not far from here. I had to make sure the first link in their chain would snap. The car surged forward. I drove calmly, obeying all the rules. I did not need to hurry. The trap was set, and they were already standing in it with both feet. I just had to pull the string. The phone rang the second I parked in a dark alley across from the office building where Julian Vance worked. Marcus's photo flashed on the screen. A smiling boy in front of the Eiffel Tower. A 10-year-old photo. Now that boy was preparing a noose for me. I exhaled, relaxed my facial muscles, and even slumped slightly, preparing to step into the role. I pressed accept. "Mom?" There was so much fake worry in his voice it almost made me sick. "Where are you? We are worried sick. The duck is getting cold, the wine is open. You promised to be here by 7. I paused for just as long as an elderly person needs to gather their thoughts. "Oh, Marcus!" My voice trembled. I added a note of confusion and slight panic. "I am so sorry, honey. I have run into some trouble." What happened? The tone shifted instantly from caring to irritated. "Where are you?" "A flat tire. Can you believe it? I hit something sharp right as I was leaving the city. I'm standing here on the shoulder waiting for a tow truck. They said it would be 30 minutes. I am so upset. My hands are shaking. I could not even call you right away." There was silence on the line. I could hear him covering the microphone with his hand, but modern smartphones pick up even a whisper. "She blew a tire, waiting for a tow. She will be here in half an hour," Marcus muttered to someone nearby. And then I heard Brianna's voice, shrill and poisonous like broken glass. Tell her to hurry up. The vulture is getting twitchy. He won't wait all night. Tell her to leave the car and take an Uber." I smiled, not a kind grandmother's smile, but a predator's grin. They were not even hiding it. The vulture. They used his street name in front of me, confident that the old woman heard nothing or understood nothing. "Mom," Marcus spoke again, his voice turning to Honey. "Do not worry, the main thing is that you are okay. Listen, why don't I call you a black car? I will pay for it. Just leave the car there, we will deal with it later." No, Honey," I whimpered. "How can I leave it? It's your father's old Volvo. It's a memory. I will wait. There is a good mechanic on the way. I will be there soon, I promise. Do not start without me." "We are waiting for you, Mom." Impatience mixed with contempt was evident in his voice. "Just hurry. We have a surprise for you." "A surprise?" I asked with childlike hope. "Yes, a huge one." He paused, and I could almost physically feel him smirking. "Do not worry about the car, Mom. After we talk tonight, you will forget all about money problems and those old clunkers. You will have everything new. Everything." "Thank you, Honey. You are so thoughtful." I hung up. "Everything will be new. Sure. A new poverty, a new loneliness." I looked out the window. Right in front of me, across the street, the door to the notary's office opened. Julian Vance stepped out onto the porch. He was in an expensive coat that hung on him like a sack, and he was nervously looking around. He was clutching a leather briefcase. I held up my phone and hit record. The video started. Julian walked down the steps and headed toward a silver SUV parked nearby. I zoomed in. I recognized the plates. That car was on the books of Marcus's dealership. I had seen the paperwork when I was still helping him with his accounting. Julian got into the car. No one else was driving. It meant the car had been given to him for his use or as payment. I filmed him starting the engine and pulling out of the lot. Clearly, sharply, with time and location stamps. There it was, the link in the chain. The notary who processed a fraudulent deal was driving away in a car belonging to the main beneficiary of that deal. A direct connection, conflict of interest, conspiracy. For a court, that would have been enough to void any signature. But I did not want a court, not yet. I wanted a total collapse. I sent the video file to Leo with a short note. Notary in Marcus's car, time 7:15 p.m. Add it to the folder. The reply came instantly, a thumbs up emoji. Leo was working. The folder was growing. I leaned back in the seat. It was warm in the car, but I was shivering. Not from the cold, but from the adrenaline. They thought I was standing on a shoulder, crying over a flat tire. They were laughing at me, discussing how they would divide up my life while the duck got cold. Brianna was probably already mentally trying on my earrings, and Marcus was calculating how many debts he would clear by selling my shop. Their arrogance was their greatest enemy. They were so used to seeing me as a resource, a function, an ATM with ears, that they forgot I am a living person and I am smarter than them. 30 minutes. I gave them a 30-minute head start. Let them get nervous. Let the vulture start getting angry and putting pressure on Marcus. Let Brianna start hissing at her husband. Let the atmosphere in that house reach a boiling point. When I walked in, they needed to be on edge. People who are nervous make mistakes. I started the car. Now I was actually heading to them, but not as a lamb to the slaughter. I was going in like an inspector who shows up for a surprise audit at a warehouse where he knows for a fact that theft is rampant. I glanced at the velvet pouch on the passenger seat. My pass into the den. My Trojan horse. "Ready, kids?" I whispered to the empty car. "Is the duck cold? That's all right. I'm about to serve you a dinner so hot it'll burn you through the plate." I turned on my blinker and pulled onto the road. The tires hummed on the asphalt, counting down the yards to the finale. They wanted a surprise. They were going to get one. I stopped again, just a couple of miles before the entrance to the neighborhood. I needed to do one last check. Intuition is good, but numbers never lie. I pulled a tablet out of my purse. Marcus always laughed at me for being stuck in the last century with my loops and scales. But he did not know one thing. I always kept up with the times when it came to security. 2 years ago, I had a remote access program installed on my shop's server, a back door that no one knew about, not even the head accountant. I entered the password. The screen flickered and opened the database. I began scanning the registry of documents uploaded to the system in the last 24 hours. If they had conducted a deal through a notary, traces would show up in the digital real estate registry I had access to as the owner. And I found it. The file had an innocent name, Security Agreement Scan. I opened it. The document loaded slowly, as if it did not want to reveal the truth to me. But when the text appeared on the screen, my breath hitched. Not from fear, but from the sheer scale of the cynicism. It was not a sales agreement, as I had assumed. It was a loan agreement, a massive, monstrous loan with predatory interest rates. The creditor was a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, but I knew exactly who stood behind such outfits. This was mob money, gray capital laundered through real estate. But the worst part was in the collateral section. It was not just my jewelry shop on Fifth Avenue. It was my apartment, my cottage in the Hamptons, and even the garage where my husband's old Volvo was kept. Marcus had mortgaged everything, absolutely everything I owned. I scrolled to the end of the document. The deadline for the first payment was 48 hours from the moment of signing. If the money did not arrive, the ownership of all property would transfer to the creditor without a trial via a notary's executive order. That very notary, Julian Vance. The 48 hours would expire tomorrow morning. I looked at the numbers, and they formed a terrifying mosaic. This dinner was not an attempt to get money from me for his debts. This dinner was the final act. They needed the stones from the Heritage Collection not to sell them, but to use as interest to delay the confiscation of the property just long enough for them to throw me out onto the street legally. They were not just robbing me. They were planning to make me homeless. A destitute old woman who would die in a shelter while they lived in my apartment and ate through the proceeds of my business. It was a murder, a slow social murder of his own mother. My hand slid across the screen, zooming in on the last page, the page with the signatures. There, next to the flamboyant squiggle of the creditor's representative, was my signature. Eleanor A. Lowry. I stared at it, and a cold sweat broke out over me. It was not just a forgery, it was a perfect copy, too perfect. It had all my characteristic quirks, the loop on the E, the sharp stroke at the end, even the slant of the letters. No handwriting expert would have distinguished it from the original at first glance. But I knew I had not signed it. Where did they get the sample? I combed through my memory for documents Marcus might have seen. Powers of attorney? No, I had revoked those 3 years ago. Checks? I always sign those with a short scrawl. And then it hit me. I opened the gallery on my phone where I kept photos of things important to me. I scrolled down to the archive folder from 5 years ago. Marcus's 30th birthday. I had given him a rare watch and a card, a large, beautiful handmade card where I had written my congratulations and signed my full name, solemnly and with love. I found the photo of that card. I zoomed in on the signature. It was identical. They had not just copied it. They had scanned my birthday wish, cut out the signature filled with motherly love and wishes for happiness, and pasted it into a document that destroyed my life. What I had written with love, they had turned into a weapon against me. Something inside me died permanently. The part of my soul that, somewhere very deep down, still hoped this was a mistake, that Marcus was just confused, that he was being forced. That part burned to ash. All that remained was a scorched wasteland, and in that wasteland stood the monolith of my resolve. I was no longer a mother. I was a jeweler seeing a flaw in a stone. And if a flaw cannot be fixed by grinding, the stone must be split to save what still has value. Marcus and Brianna were the flaw, a deep crack that threatened to destroy everything. I closed the tablet. My hands were steady. My heart beat evenly and powerfully, like a hammer on an anvil. "Well then," I said aloud, my voice sounding hollow and hard in the car. "You wanted to take everything? You will get everything you deserve, down to the last cent." I forwarded the file with the agreement to Leo. Message: they mortgaged everything. Deadline tomorrow. Proceed with Plan Hurricane. Leo replied in a second. Copy that. The team is moving out, waiting for your signal. I tucked the tablet into my bag and checked my hair in the rearview mirror. A woman with eyes the color of steel looked back at me. There were no tears in those eyes, no fear, only cold calculation. I shifted into gear. Marcus's house was 5 minutes away. I was not going to dinner. I was going to an execution, and I would be the executioner today. The gates opened before me silently, as if inviting me into a beast's maw. I drove into the yard and parked right at the front entrance next to Marcus's SUV. The Vulture's black sedan was nowhere to be seen. He had likely been tucked away in the garage or the backyard, away from prying eyes. I got out of the car, putting on the mask. A soft smile, slightly misty eyes, relaxed shoulders. I was the embodiment of forgiveness, a mother returning to her prodigal son. The door swung open. Marcus and Brianna were standing on the threshold. "Mom!" Marcus rushed to me, arms wide. He hugged me tightly, too tightly. I could smell his cologne, expensive, sharp, trying to mask the scent of fear that radiated from him in waves. "Finally! We were so worried." "I'm sorry, honey," I muttered, letting him hug me. "Old age is no picnic. I got so turned around with that tire." Brianna followed behind. She was in a form-fitting dress, a smile on her face that did not reach her eyes. "Mrs. Lowry, we are so glad," she sang, kissing the air next to my cheek. "Come in quickly, you must be freezing. Everything is ready." They led me into the dining room. The table was set with deliberate luxury, crystal, silver, candles. In the center sat the duck they had made such a fuss over, but I noticed there were only 3 place settings. The Vulture was not expected at the table. He was somewhere nearby in the shadows waiting for his cut. The entire dinner was a performance for an audience of 1. Marcus kept pouring me wine, which I only sipped. Brianna asked about my health, the weather, old acquaintances. They were sickeningly polite, nauseatingly attentive. "Mom," Marcus suddenly said, setting down his fork. His voice became low and intimate. He covered my hand with his palm. "I want to say, I've been a fool these last 3 years. I regret it so much. Brianna and I realized that family is everything. Money comes and goes, but we only have one mother." Brianna dabbed her dry eyes with a napkin. "Yes, Mrs. Lowry. We want to start with a clean slate." I looked at them and felt a wave of disgust rising inside me. They were playing on the most sacred feelings. They used the words family and mother like lockpicks for my safe. If I had not known the truth, if I had not seen the Vulture and the mortgage documents, I might have believed them. I would have wanted to believe them. "I've been thinking a lot too," I said, my voice trembling on purpose. I realized I was too strict. Money, stones. What good are they to me in a grave? I want to see you happy. Marcus's eyes widened. A predatory glint flashed in them. He exchanged a look with Brianna. She took the bait. "Mom, what are you talking about?" he asked cautiously. I reached into my purse. Slowly, with trembling fingers, I pulled out the velvet pouch and placed it on the table. The heavy, thick velvet hit the tablecloth with a dull thud. A silence fell over the room, so thick you could cut it with a knife. They stared at the pouch like hungry wolves at a piece of meat. "I brought you a gift," I whispered. "As a sign of reconciliation. I know you are having some difficulties, and I decided it was time for the Heritage Collection to serve the family." I untied the drawstring and shook the contents onto my palm. A green fire ignited under the light of the chandelier, the solstice emerald, or what they took for it. 20 carats of deep, saturated color. Perfect cut. The stone danced, shimmered, hypnotized. It was my best work in the field of imitation, a synthetic emerald grown in a lab and cut to deceive the eye of even a sophisticated enthusiast, but not a professional, and certainly not a gemologist's tools. "My God," Brianna exhaled. Her hand involuntarily reached for the stone. Marcus froze. He looked at the emerald, and I could see the numbers spinning in his head. Millions, debts, freedom. Mom, he swallowed hard. This is the solstice. You're giving it to us? Take it. I placed the stone in Brianna's palm. She gripped it so hard her knuckles turned white. Sell it. Buy a bigger house. Pay off your loans. Live in peace. I only want one thing, for you to be happy. I watched them. This was the moment of truth. If there had been a single shred of conscience left in them, they would have refused. They would have said, Mom, don't. This is Dad's memory. We'll handle it ourselves. But they looked at each other, and in that look was triumph. A filthy, sticky triumph of winners who had just played a sucker. Thank you, Mrs. Lowry. Brianna was almost crying with happiness. You have no idea. Thank you. Thanks, Mom. Marcus stood up and kissed the top of my head. You're the best. And then, before even sitting back down, he looked at his watch. Oh, he said with fake concern. I completely forgot. We're running low on wine. I have a vintage bottle in my office, just for this occasion. I'll go grab it. He reached out his hand to Brianna. She didn't hesitate for a second. She dropped the stone into his palm. I'll be right back. He threw over his shoulder and nearly ran out of the room. I watched him go. He was not going to a wine cellar. He was going to his office, where the vulture was waiting for him, where he was going to exchange a mother's love for the cancellation of a debt to gangsters. Brianna stayed with me. She was glowing, chirping away about how we were going to live now, how we'd go to resorts, how she'd take care of me. She was already mentally spending the money from a piece of colored glass. I listened to her and nodded, smiling that same soft smile. But under the table, my hand was pressing the phone. The trap had snapped shut. Marcus was taking a fake to a professional. The vulture is not Brianna. He has a tester, a loop, experience. It would take him exactly 1 minute to realize they were trying to hand him a dummy, and that was when the real show would begin. Brianna, dear, I sweetly interrupted her chatter. Could you pour me some water, please? My throat is so dry from the excitement. Of course, Mrs. Lowry. She jumped up and ran to the kitchen. As soon as she was out, I pulled out my phone, hit record, and placed it at the edge of the table, covered by a napkin. Then I stood up and tiptoed to the door leading to the hallway. From the office at the end of the hall, voices were already drifting. First quiet, then louder. I heard Marcus's voice, excited, boastful, and the vulture's voice, low, rumbling. And then came the sound I was waiting for, the sound of a fist slamming onto a table. The show was starting. I returned to my seat at the table exactly a second before Brianna walked back into the dining room with a pitcher of water. My heart beat as steadily as a metronome. 60 beats per minute. The rhythm of a professional who knows. The stone is set. The mounting is polished. All that's left is to strike the hallmark. Brianna poured me water. Her face shone with self-satisfaction. She already saw herself as the mistress of her own world. She thought she had won. Well, it was time to let her dig her own grave. Brianna, I said, taking a small sip, you know, I've been thinking about the shop. Maybe it really is time for me to retire. She froze, glass in hand. Her gaze darted to me, sharp, calculating. Of course, Mrs. Lowry. Her voice became smooth. It's long past time for you to rest. Why deal with the dust? Those picky clients? Marcus and I will take care of the business. We'll modernize it. Modernize it? I echoed. Like that mortgage Marcus set up yesterday? At 20% interest a month? The smile slid off her face like cheap gold plating. The glass in her hand trembled, wine splashing onto the white tablecloth, spreading in a blood-red stain. What are you talking about? She whispered. About the loan agreement, dear. The one where you mortgaged my shop, my apartment, and even my cottage. And about the forged signature you so cleverly copied from my birthday card. She turned pale. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for support, but Marcus was not there. She was alone. It was for your own good, she suddenly blurted out, the mask of politeness finally falling. Now sitting before me was not a caring daughter-in-law, but a cornered predator. You're sitting on millions and doing nothing with it, and we need money to grow. Marcus is a genius. He's just had bad luck. We were going to pay it all back as soon as things took off. Pay it back? I smirked. By mortgaging my life to gangsters? You never planned to pay back anything. You were planning to sell me off in pieces. What does it matter anyway? She shrieked. It's all going to go to Marcus eventually. You're old. You don't need anything anymore. We just accelerated the inevitable. I looked at the phone lying under the napkin. The recording indicator was blinking red. Confession obtained. Complicity confirmed. She knew about the forgery. She knew about the mortgage. She justified it. Thank you, Brianna, I said calmly. You explained everything very clearly. I glanced at my watch. It was 9:05. Leo should already be in position. I sent him a text with the code word, stone. The moment Marcus left the room, it meant the transfer of goods had occurred. Now the tactical team was just waiting for one thing, confirmation of fraud or a threat to life. And that confirmation was currently being provided by Marcus himself behind the closed doors of his office. I closed my eyes and imagined what was happening in there. Marcus walks in, beaming. He places the velvet pouch on the desk in front of the vulture. The man takes his time, opens it, pulls out the stone. In the light of the desk lamp, the emerald glows with green fire. The vulture is pleased. He already sees himself settling his debt with the Chicago people. But he is a professional. He pulls out a loop. He pulls out a portable refractometer or a thermal conductivity tester. He touches the probe to the stone, and the device stays silent. Or it shows glass. Marcus is probably smiling at that moment, pouring wine, talking about how generous his mother is. He isn't looking at the device. He doesn't know. The vulture looks up, and in those eyes, there is no longer a business interest. There is a death sentence. He decides Marcus is trying to play him, that this suit-wearing brat is trying to hand him a piece of glass instead of a fortune, while the real stones are hidden somewhere else. To men like the vulture, that isn't just a lie. It's an insult. It's a spit in the face of a man who has killers standing behind him. The silence of the house was shattered by a crash. The sound was dull and heavy, like something massive. A chair or a body had fallen. It was followed by the sound of breaking glass and a scream. It was Marcus screaming, not from joy, but from terror. "What did you try to hand me, you brat?" The vulture's roar was audible even through the oak doors in the long hallway. "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Brianna jumped up from her chair. Her face turned white as chalk. "What? What is that?" she stammered. I slowly stood up, picked up my phone, stopped the recording, and sent the file to Leo. Then I hit the call button. "Leo," I said into the phone, looking directly into Brianna's terror-widened eyes. "It's time. There is an armed criminal in the house. Life is in danger. Move in." I put the phone in my pocket. "What have you done?" Brianna whispered, backing away toward the wall. You knew?" "I am a jeweler, Brianna," I replied, squaring my shoulders. "I can tell a fake from the original, both in stones and in people. You both turned out to be cheap imitations." The wail of sirens drifted in from the street. Bright flashes of blue and red lights cut through the darkness outside the window, reflecting in the crystal on the table. The gates were being smashed in by an armored truck. The thud of heavy boots on the driveway sounded like music. I walked toward the office, calmly, without rushing. I was not going to save my son. I was going to witness his downfall. This was my finale, my reckoning, and it was cut perfectly. I pushed open the heavy office door. It gave way easily, revealing a scene worthy of a cheap crime drama, the kind my son had so diligently tried to turn our lives into. The room smelled of expensive tobacco, spilled wine, and animal fear. Marcus was pinned face down on the polished surface of his massive oak desk. His arms were twisted unnaturally behind his back by one of the vulture's goons. The vulture himself was standing nearby, red with rage, clutching the velvet pouch as if he wanted to strangle my son with it. Shards of a bottle and the emerald lay on the floor. In the lamp's light, the stone sparkled mockingly, a piece of glass that had brought down empires. Seeing me, Marcus jerked, trying to turn his head. "Her!" he shrieked, his voice breaking into a falsetto. "It's all her fault. She set me up. Do you hear me, Victor? She gave me the fake. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." The vulture slowly turned his head to me. His eyes were empty and cold, like the barrel of a gun. "Who the hell are you, lady?" he growled. "Your brat here tried to play me." I did not flinch. I did not take a step back. I walked into the room and stood right in the center, my back as straight as if I were at a royal gala rather than a criminal den. "I am a jeweler," I said. My voice was quiet, but in that silence, it cut the air like a diamond saw. "And this is my son, to whom I gave a souvenir half an hour ago. A family keepsake, a symbol of reconciliation." I turned my gaze to Marcus. He was looking at me with a wild mixture of hope and hatred. You said it was the solstice," he shouted, spitting as he spoke. "You said it was worth millions." "I said it was a gift, Marcus," I stated flatly. "I said, let the collection serve the family. I did not tell you to sell it. I did not tell you to take it to a criminal while your mother sat at your table drinking water. You appraised my gift yourself. You valued it at the amount of your debt, and you were wrong." "You're lying," he roared, trying to break free. "You set this all up. You knew." "Knew what?" I asked in an icy tone. "That my son would try to fence stolen goods before dessert was served? Yes, Marcus, I knew, because I know you." The vulture stepped toward me. His face was twisted in a grimace. "Listen, lady, I don't give a damn about your family drama. The stone is junk. The debt stands, and now it's higher. The apartment, the cottage, everything you have. Sign it over now, or I'll take your son's—" He didn't get to finish. The door behind me burst open with a crash that rattled the glass in the cabinets. "Special ops, everybody down. Hands behind your heads." The room was instantly filled with men in tactical gear, black uniforms, and rifles. Leo walked in behind them, calm in a civilian coat, but with the same authoritative stride I had known for 30 years. The vulture was tackled in a second. His bodyguard was laid out next to Marcus, who was now lying on the floor by police order, his nose pressed into the rug. "Victor Cross," Leo said loudly, walking over to the vulture as the handcuffs clicked. "Long time no see. Attempted fraud, extortion, illegal diamond trafficking, the whole 9 yards." The vulture spat on the rug, but stayed silent. He knew the game was up. Leo nodded to the officers to pick up Marcus. My son was pulled to his feet. His expensive jacket was wrinkled. His tie was crooked. His face was gray, covered in sweat. He looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered. "Mommy, tell them. Tell them it's a mistake. I'm your son. I got confused. Help me, please." It was his last move, pleading, playing on pity, using the one thing he thought he had left, my love. I slowly walked over to him, pulled a folded sheet of paper from my purse, and unfolded it. It was a printout of the mortgage agreement with the forged signature, along with the GPS log of the notary's trip in his car. "A mistake?" I asked, showing him the document. "This is the mistake. Forging your mother's signature to throw her onto the street, mortgaging the house you grew up in, risking my husband's life's work, your father's work." He stared at the paper, and the last of the color drained from his face. "Mom, I would have paid it all back." "No, Marcus," I shook my head. "You would have never paid it back. You would have sold me too if you could have gotten a good price for me." I turned to the lead detective standing next to Leo. "Officer, here is the statement for fraud, forgery, and attempted grand larceny. Here is the evidence: the agreement, the video of the meeting with the notary, and the audio recording of the conversation in the dining room where his wife confirms the conspiracy. I am ready to testify." "Mom!" Marcus screamed. It was the cry of an animal caught in a trap. "What are they doing? I'm going to go to prison. You're going to put your own son in jail?" I looked him straight in the eyes. At that moment, I did not see the little boy I walked to his first day of school. I saw a stranger, a dangerous man who had tried to destroy my life. "You put yourself in jail, Marcus," I replied, "the moment you decided your mother was just a resource, and I have simply stopped paying your bail." They led him away. He kept looking back, shouting incoherent things, calling for me, cursing me, calling for me again. But I stood motionless, like a rock. There was movement in the doorway. Brianna was trying to slip past the police into the hallway, clutching her purse to her chest. "Hold it right there!" one of the officers barked. "I have nothing to do with this," she shrieked. "I didn't know anything. It was all him. I'm just his wife. I'm a victim." "A victim?" Leo asked, taking the agreement from my hand. "Mrs. Brianna Lowry, is this your signature as a witness on this mortgage?" "Terms acknowledged, confirming the voluntary nature of the transaction. That's your handwriting." Brianna froze. Her gaze snapped to me. It was filled with pure hatred. "Go to hell, Eleanor Lowry," she hissed. "I hope you die with those stones." "Take her in," Leo said calmly. "Conspiracy to commit grand larceny." The handcuffs clicked on her thin wrists. When they were all gone, the office became silent. Only Leo and I remained, surrounded by the wreckage. Leo walked over and put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "How are you doing, Eleanor?" I looked at the empty desk where my fake stone had just sat, destroying their house of cards. "I'm fine, Leo," I said, and with surprise I realized it was the truth. I just did an inventory, and I wrote off the dead stock. I picked up the emerald from the floor. It was intact. Good glass, durable. I squeezed it in my fist. It was over. I was free. Spring came early to New York. The sun, still cold but already blindingly bright, flooded my workshop on Fifth Avenue, dancing off the display cases. I was sitting at my bench, hunched over my setting tools. In my hands was a 3-carat diamond, a commission for a young opera singer. The stone was good, but the setting needed refinement. I loved this work. I loved the smell of polish, the quiet ring of metal, the feeling of raw material yielding to patience and skill. The trials had ended a month ago. The mortgage agreement had been annulled as fraudulent. The apartment, the cottage, the shop, everything had returned to me, scrubbed clean of the sticky web of lies. Marcus got 5 years. Brianna got 3 years probation, thanks to her cooperation with the prosecution, but with a travel ban and a massive fine. I did not go to the sentencing. I didn't need to. I had already delivered my verdict that evening. The Heritage Collection was now sitting in a bank vault, and I was the only one with the keys, with one exception. Last week, I sold the real Solstice Emerald, not to gangsters, not to middlemen, but to an auction house in London. The proceeds went toward creating a scholarship fund for talented young female jewelers, the ones with the gift but no money for training. Let them build their own empires from scratch, without debts and without handouts. The workshop was quiet. No one called demanding money. No one lied to my face and called it love. I set down my file and picked up a cup of tea. Earl Grey, hot and fragrant. I took a sip, savoring the taste and the peace. My gaze fell on a black and white photo in a frame on the shelf. I'm 25 there. I'm standing at the entrance to my first tiny workshop in a stained apron, but my eyes are burning with fire. I smiled at that girl. We made it. We got our lives back. I picked up my loupe again, held it to my eye, and looked at the diamond. The stone was clean, not a single inclusion, not a single crack. Perfect transparency. The world was finally in focus, and it was beautiful. Well, friends, that is the story. To be honest, as I was reading this ending, I got goosebumps myself. Eleanor Lowry, a woman of steel, right? But let's discuss. Do you think she did the right thing? After all, Marcus is her son, her own flesh and blood. Many would say a mother should forgive everything, but where is the line where forgiveness becomes enabling a crime? If she had forgiven him, if she had given everything away, how would it have ended? She likely would have been on the street, and Marcus would have lost the money anyway, because greed only grows with the eating. Let me know in the comments. Could you have been that tough with your own child if you discovered such a betrayal? And one more thing. Do you want to know what happened next with Eleanor? Maybe she will meet someone worthy or take on an apprentice who becomes like a daughter to her? If you are interested in a sequel or have questions about the plot, be sure to write them down. I read every one of your comments. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If this story touched you, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories. We have many more life dramas and unexpected twists in store for you. We wish you all the best.